Good afternoon to you. 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news today. And that includes the White House's pressure on the media when it comes to this impeachment story. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Speaking of the impeachment inquiry, let me merge a couple stories together. Mitt Romney announced today that he is not seeking re-election. He's done. He's looking forward to a new generation of leaders to tackle climate change and BLM and all sorts of other nonsense. Here is Romney talking about the impeachment inquiry today. What does he think of it?
I know the House is beginning an impeachment inquiry. I haven't heard any allegation of something that would rise to the level of a high crime or misdemeanor.
Okay, let me pause on that. High crime and misdemeanor. You've heard a bunch of lefties use that in to protect Biden. High crime and misdemeanor. These people have not read the United States Constitution, have they? They're not even really all that aware of what's in it. There are a couple of other stipulations in the impeachment clause of the Constitution. They aren't just high crimes and misdemeanors. There's also treason and bribery. That's a big one. Bribery. Did you take money in order to enrich yourself, to enrich your family, and to give away something that wasn't yours to give away? Did that happen? Did you take bribes, Joe Biden? He says he hasn't heard evidence that rise to the levels of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Of something that would rise to the level of a high crime or misdemeanor. I think it'd be very unusual to actually see a referral of impeachment. I don't expect that to happen. They can inquire and see if there's evidence that shows something else. I don't think they'll find that. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't think they'll find that? So you're already taking his side in this? And again, this is ignoring the mountain of evidence that's already in front of us. Mitt Romney totally uninterested in that.
Evidence that shows something else. I don't think they'll find that. I don't know. But there's been no allegation of that. And any hint of that has been denied by the president. So I
just realized something. You think Romney's been insufferable up until this point? He's in his lame duck phase now. Now he's not even running for re-election. He feels like he's liberated to be who he truly is in public. Ugh, that's going to be awful. This next phase is just going to be the worst of Mitt Romney. So we're already getting a sample of it. There's Romney today. And so I talked about it in the last hour with Congressman Pat Fallon, but just to give you a quick crash course in the evidence against the Biden family, this isn't Hunter Biden's business dealings. This is the Biden family selling us out to enrich themselves. And here we go. Just jotted down a bunch of things. No particular order today, but tried to put them kind of sequentially. You've got the 51 intelligence officials who lied about the contents of Hunter's laptop. They claimed it was Russian disinformation. It wasn't. It was actually his laptop, as proven endlessly by forensic examiners, that is, who looked at the authenticity of the emails and said, yeah, they're real. From the moment the New York Post published it, we knew they were real. And, of course, you had agencies of the government who were getting involved in gathering up intel officials in order to shut down that story, in order to meddle in our election and to get Joe Biden elected. Joe Biden lied on a debate stage about taking money from China. He claimed that my son has never taken money from, what's this thing he's talking about, China? We know he took millions from China. He lied about not discussing business with Hunter. That has been proven over and over in the public record. He lied about who he was in his own emails. He was using pseudonyms to include Robert L. Peters and Robin Ware. There's an allegation, credible allegation, that he did accept a bribe in order to get Viktor Shokin fired to take the heat off of Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company. That allegation is contained in a bunch of places, but particularly in an FBI form, in the form of an FBI informant paid by the FBI over years for being a trustworthy source, giving the FBI information about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden working with Burisma to get Viktor Shokin fired, specifically Zlochevsky, who was the head of Burisma. Zlochevsky has, according to this informant, 15 recordings of Hunter Biden discussing the bribe and 2 recordings of Joe Biden discussing the bribe. It got so bad, the allegations here, that Nancy Mace, the Republican congresswoman who's not exactly known to be some, hair on fire right-winger, she said, I read that thing and I said, man, there's something deeply wrong here. Deeply wrong. Okay? You've got that. You've got the audio recordings of Biden bragging about getting Viktor Shokin fired. You have audio recordings of his phone calls with the former president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, discussing how Shokin was being fired. And Poroshenko says on the phone call, we're firing him even though he didn't do anything. We have no evidence of corruption. We don't have any evidence that he deserves to be fired. But you asked, you are saying that you're not giving us this money unless we do it. So we did it. I just accepted his resignation. He's out. Poroshenko says that. That's a recorded phone call. We've played it here on this show. We know that 10% for the big guy means Joe Biden. How do we know that? Hunter Biden's business partner said that. Tony Bobulinski, in multiple interviews, including with the FBI, which, of course, it's a crime to lie to the FBI. Have you noticed they haven't charged Tony Bobulinski with lying to the FBI? And in interviews with Tucker Carlson, said that Joe Biden is the big guy. How certain is he? 1,000% that Joe Biden is the big guy and that the business was crafted around enriching him. Tony Bobulinski said, I wasn't allowed to put his name in writing. We were warned not to. Got it. Also, there are dinners and calls, endless dinners and calls, where Joe Biden is involved, talking to the family's business partners in order to enrich, yes, the family. Some of those dinners, at least two, took place at Cafe Milano right here in Washington, D.C., in Georgetown. Joe Biden went there. How does that square with he didn't know anything about his son's business dealings? How does that square with that? It doesn't. Obviously, that's a lie. Devin Archer, another Hunter Biden business partner, just testified before Congress, just did an interview with Tucker Carlson over the past few weeks. And during that, he said out loud, Joe Biden was definitely aware of what Hunter was up to. Definitely aware of what Hunter was up to. And that Biden was involved in the family business. You are going to hear the White House claim over and over and over again that Biden didn't have anything to do with any of this. In fact, here's Ian Sams today. He is he's a White House spokesman. They send him out when they need real spin. They send Corinne out when they need, it's like a comedy routine when they send her out. But they sent Ian Sams out. He's spinning on behalf of Biden. And again, remember, we have moved from Biden doesn't know anything about Hunter's business dealings to this.
The president was present at some of the meetings between Hunter Biden and his business associates. Why was the president at those meetings on those phone calls?
Well, again, I think this is part of the right wing's misinformation machine to try to confuse.
No, there's no misinformation. That is true. Those things are true. This is a part of the misinformation machine, says the White House.
People about what the truth is. The truth is that the president, as he has said publicly for years, calls his family every day to check in. He calls his son every day to check in. He calls his other family members to check in to see how they're doing.
He just loves him so much. He loves everything about Hunter. He loves all the money that flows in from Hunter's activities. He just loves him.
He loves them. They're a tight-knit family. And what the GOP's own witness testified in this case is that that's exactly what the president was doing.
Pay attention to that detail. He's now alluding to Devin Archer. He doesn't say his name because everything is euphemisms and half-truths or outright lies. But he says even the GOP's own witness, that would be Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's close business partner, even his own witness says Joe Biden is as pure as the driven snow.
They're a tight-knit family. And what the GOP's own witness testified in this case is that that's exactly what the president was doing. He was checking in with Hunter during a particularly hard time, I might add, a time where the family was going through Hunter's brother Beau's illness. And, of course, the president checks in with his son and talks to him.
Of course. What else would you expect? Okay, so what did Devin Archer actually say? What, you ready for this? Here's Devin Archer speaking to Tucker Carlson just a few short weeks ago, and Tucker asked specifically about this idea that Biden was completely unaware. He wasn't involved at all. He didn't know anything.
There's no corruption here at all. This is totally normal. Joe Biden had no role whatsoever in his son's business or knowledge of it. But
right.
That seems false.
Yeah, I think that's categorically false.
Categorically false. I think that's categorically false. More from Devin Archer.
False. Yeah, I think that's categorically false. I think that he was aware of Hunter's business. He met with Hunter's business partners. You found a letter that illustrates that he knew me.
And he's
think
thanking you. He's thanking you for his efforts.
So I think that was, I
for
think
your efforts. Yeah.
I think that that's that's not factually right.
Yeah, that's not factually right. So that is, you hear Devin Archer there, kind of unwittingly now 2 weeks ago or so. It was actually probably longer ago than that. It all runs together. But the point is, Devin Archer this year dunking on this now White House talking point that, Biden didn't know anything. He wasn't even involved. He just loves his son. Devin Archer's like, yeah, that's categorically false. That is categorically false. Half of my money goes to Pop. That was a Hunter Biden text message complaining to another family member that he has to constantly give all of his cash to Joe. Does that sound like evidence to you? If you were a prosecutor and you were putting this together, you would say, wouldn't you ask, what does this mean? Or would you just be like, that's probably nothing. Let's just shred that. Shh. But we don't need that piece of evidence. It's not even evidence. I'm sitting here with my father. Hunter threatens a foreign business partner. You better send the money. And if you don't, I promise you, I and the man sitting next to me will make your life a living hell. What does that mean? That's probably nothing. Let's shred that right down the shredder. There's nothing to that. Hunter Biden was on Air Force Two more times than I've seen pictures of Air Force Two in my entire life. How often have you seen a photo of Air Force Two? They don't usually show you the vice presidential flight, right? It's like, it's nothing. I mean, there's not much press coverage for obvious reasons. It's kind of a pointless job. But the reality is, unless you're handling all of Ukraine, the reality is, I guarantee you, Hunter Biden has been on Air Force Two and taken flights more times than I have ever seen a wire photo of Air Force Two. And when he goes on these trips, he's meeting with his business partners and then having them meet with Joe. They fly to China, they land, Dad, I want you to meet the guys, and they all get together. What is that? Is that evidence, or does that go in the shredder too? Is that nothing? Hundreds of suspicious activity reports. You heard me correctly. Hundreds of suspicious activity reports documented by the banks that were handling all of Hunter Biden's bank accounts. So the only reason you get a suspicious activity report is if the bank detects evidence of illegal activity potentially, money laundering, the types of patterns that would register a red flag on your account. There's something very bizarre going on here. Hundreds of suspicious activity reports then being transferred to the government. These banks, their obligation is to alert the government when they see something suspicious. They did hundreds of times in the case of the Biden family. How often does that happen to the normal person? How many suspicious activity reports have occurred on your bank account? Knowing the quality of this audience, the answer to that is zero. Zero. You're not getting suspicious activity reports on your account. I've asked people who know about this, and they say it is unusual for the average account to even get one. Hundreds for the Biden family? Does that tell you anything? Or does that go in the shredder? Dozens of shell companies? What do you need shell companies for? How many shell companies do you own, Corey? How many? Corey's putting up a goose egg right now. Jeff's working the board today. How many? Goose egg from Jeff. So, and that's same for me. I have no shell companies. How many shell companies do you own? The Bidens have a lot. They have a lot. They have payments that have been fragmented. Big sums of money, millions of dollars, broken up into a bunch of bite-sized, maybe you'd say fun-size payments that are spread all over the Biden family. All sorts of random characters in the Biden family are getting money. We're not supposed to ask any questions about that. That one goes right in the shredder. And now, of course, there's the actual investigation into all of this. There's a U.S. attorney for the District of Delaware called David Weiss, who supposedly has been looking into all of this, admitting behind closed doors to IRS investigators who have spent their careers chasing down people who fail to uphold their end of the bargain, fail to pay their taxes, try and hide it from the American taxpayer. They've been chasing these people for years. They've seen it all. And the second they were put on the Biden case, they saw things they have never seen before. They weren't allowed to go near certain things. Dad, off limits. Joe Biden, off limits. According to IRS whistleblowers, men with sterling reputations, nobody's even undermined them. There has not been a single character witness. We haven't even had like a Christine Blasey Ford or anything. It's like nobody's come out to say that these guys are wrong or these guys are bad guys, these guys are liars. Their integrity is unquestioned. And they say this investigation has been disrupted, meddled with, and destroyed by the United States Department of Justice. And that barriers were put in their way. And every time they were about to take an investigative step, guess what happened? That Biden's team was tipped off that it was going to take place. People were prepared to keep their mouths shut at the appointed time when they were supposed to be surprised by investigators visiting their homes. You had storage facilities that were able to be cleaned out before investigators could get there. You have U.S. government officials, you understand what's being alleged here, participating in obstruction of justice in order to protect the Biden family. And I'm supposed to believe that there is nothing at the bottom of all of this? It's all just a big misunderstanding. You see, Vince, Joe Biden loves his son so much that he's willing to create all of this chaos just to express his love. If you give my son $1 million, I will fire the prosecutor in your country. Is that a bribe? Would that be a bribe, that arrangement? The left moving the goalposts all around right now. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. The White House talking points have gone out. Usually it's a little bit more subtle. Today, the White House issuing a public declaration that media execs will follow their guidance or else. It's ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Well, good afternoon to you. 5:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Before we get to the White House and the chaos they're in the middle of right now with this impeachment inquiry getting going, I do want to bring you some breaking news. A federal judge in New Mexico today has issued a restraining order against State Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's ban on carrying guns in Albuquerque and its surrounding county on grounds that it violated the United States Constitution. That's right. A judge has intervened here to say that the governor does not have the power to ban her citizens from carrying guns. She is violating the U.S. Constitution, the judge says. U.S. District Court Judge David Urias said the governor's 30-day suspension of concealed and open firearm carry rights went against recent U.S. Supreme Court rulings and violated the rights of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. Quote, they just want the right to carry their guns, Urias said of the several plaintiffs who requested restraining orders on the governor's September 8th emergency public health order. The Democratic governor issued the suspension on firearm carry laws to offer a, quote, cooling off period in which authorities could address solutions to the state's high rates of gun crime after several children were fatally shot. Yeah, by disarming law-abiding citizens, that's the solution? You're going to turn a murder into a constitutional rights crisis? Great. Anyway, so a judge intervening here. He's not the only one. A bunch of people. You saw that sheriff earlier this week, right there in the Albuquerque area in the county, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing it. It's unconstitutional. We're not enforcing this. We're not going to bust people for exercising their constitutional right." The state's attorney general, a Democrat, came out this week and also said, "Yeah, we're not enforcing this. It's unconstitutional." So it's a dunk contest on this woman. She's being posterized by everyone. She's just like, you know, and thank God. And she should not have that job. She should be behind bars, and she should, you know, she's just a bad person. And yet another Democrat governor who thinks that the Constitution is irrelevant to their job. Phil Murphy in New Jersey once famously saying the Bill of Rights was above his pay grade, and he wasn't concerning himself with it as he was trampling on people's constitutional rights and civil liberties. Amazing. So anyway, bringing you some good news today. A federal judge, slapping her upside the head. There is a White House today in the midst of some chaos. They sent out Jared Bernstein, the non-economist economist, to talk to the press today to tell them how great the economy is. The economy is not doing well. And you also had some very crazy moments because then Corinne stepped up to the microphone, and she wasn't equipped to answer anything. She was just all over the place. Actually, no, there was one more person who came before Corinne. It was John Kirby. They brought out the whole cast today. Let me do John Kirby first. Here's John Kirby under questioning from the Washington Times, reporter Jeff Murdoch, about how Biden can't stop lying. Now, This is one of the few times where I tell you radio might not do this justice. The look on John Kirby's face is one of surrender. He doesn't know what to do because the facts are not on his side.
John, in the past couple of weeks, the president has lied about being at Ground Zero the day after the September 11th attacks, falsely claimed he saw the Pittsburgh Bridge collapse, claimed his grandfather died in the hospital days before his birth. What is going on with the president? Is he just believing things that didn't happen did happen, or is he just randomly making stuff up?
The president was deeply touched and honored to be able to spend 9/11 with military members there in Alaska and some families, and was honored by their presence and the chance to make an important set of remarks about why we need to continue to remember that day, and he did that, and he spoke about a visit to Ground Zero, which he did participate in.
Oh my gosh!
About a week or so after the event.
So he lied,
and what that looked and what that smelled and what that felt like.
Oh, stop, whatever. Okay, so John Kirby offering no explanation. He offers a tepid defense of his 9/11 claim. Well, he didn't even say he got the date wrong. Can't you just admit that? I mean, how hard would it be to be like, you know what? He did go visit Ground Zero. He got the date wrong. It was a mistake, but the reality is he cares very deeply, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. They don't even bother. They don't even bother. They try to just force everything through. Oh, he's totally fine. He didn't lie about anything. Everything's good. No, it's not good. It's bad. It's really bad. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre today. The first question on the subject of the impeachment inquiry, this is how she handled it.
Will the president cooperate fully now that Speaker McCarthy has pulled the trigger on an impeachment inquiry?
So I'm going to refer you to my colleagues over at the counsel's office on any specifics to the inquiry.
I need to apologize if you're driving because I realize eye rolling can get in the way of successfully navigating the roadways. But we are going to do some more of that here as we listen to Karine. She went on to suggest in a later question that there is no evidence that Joe Biden is a bad man.
You see Republicans in Congress, right?
Which, by the way, I thought she was referring these questions to the White House counsel's office. Now she's answering some of them?
You see Republicans in Congress, right? They have spent all year investigating the president. That's what they have spent all year doing. And have turned up with no evidence. None.
Other than a mountain.
That he did anything wrong. I mean, that is what we've heard over and over again from their almost year-long investigation. And that's because the president didn't do anything wrong.
Okay. So she spends the whole presser not answering any questions on this subject to the extent that they're asked at all. White House counsel's office. He didn't do anything wrong. And so as she tries to whip around and leave the room, the New York Post's Stephen Nelson, may God bless him, yells out the actual question, and Karine definitely hears it. She kind of looks in his direction, and then she barrels out of the room.
And with that, folks,
explain why the president interacted with so many of his son's foreign business associates. More than half of voters told CNN they believe the president was involved and he lied. You can't have a response to that, Karine.
And that's it. That's all she wrote. Couple of thoughts on this. One, Stephen Nelson, in a very quick period of time, laid out why there are obviously problems here. Obviously, there's evidence against Biden, and that voters detect it. Overwhelming majorities of voters detect it, that there's reasonable evidence against Biden here. The other piece is, why was Stephen Nelson the only reporter shouting that question? Why was he alone? Did they all get together and they're like, hey, Stephen, you've got this covered. You do it. We all want to ask, but you be the guy. No, of course not. Like the rest of the room is not on Stephen Nelson's side. Stephen's just keeps going and going and going. And there he is yet again, by himself, all alone, shouting out the question. And Karine waddles off, doesn't answer it, just refuses. Meanwhile, the White House has sent out orders to the media today. And that could explain some of the behavior we're talking about here. Headline, Daily Caller, White House sends marching orders to media executives on how they should cover Biden impeachment inquiry. The White House will demand that major media outlets cover the impeachment inquiry into the president announced by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on Tuesday with, quote, scrutiny, according to CNN. McCarthy directed the Republican Party to open a formal inquiry. impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. The White House planning to send a letter, this was written this morning when this first broke, to the executives of major news outlets such as CNN, the New York Times, Fox News, the Associated Press, and CBS News, explaining the impeachment inquiry should, quote, set off alarm bells for news organizations. Quote, it's time for the media to ramp up its scrutiny of House Republicans for opening up an impeachment inquiry based on lies, said Ian Sams. I'm going to pull up the full letter here because it's a doozy. It was put out on Twitter by Heidi Przyzabala. I might be getting her pronunciation wrong. She's at Politico. It's time for the media to ramp up its scrutiny of House Republicans for opening an impeachment inquiry based on lies. Impeachment is grave, rare, and historic. The Constitution requires treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. At least they quoted all of them. But House Republicans are publicly stating they have uncovered none of these things. After nearly 9 months of investigating, House Republicans haven't been able to turn up any evidence of the president doing anything wrong. The memo goes on to quote numerous Republicans stating there is no evidence to impeach, Heidi writes. For example, Congressman Don Bacon, Republican from Nebraska, I think before we move on to an impeachment inquiry, there should be a direct link to the president in some evidence. We should have some clear evidence of a high crime or a misdemeanor, not just assuming there may be one. Great. Good job, Don Bacon. Maybe look at the evidence, dude, before you open up your suck. For years, Republicans in Congress have tried to muddy the waters by attracting media coverage of their allegations, and as they choose to move forward with impeachment, it is the responsibility of the independent press, they said with a straight face, to treat their claims with the appropriate scrutiny. Covering impeachment as a process story, Republicans say X, but the White House says Y, is a disservice to the American public, who relies on the independent press to hold those in power accountable. And then they go on. Now, more direct attacks here. And in the modern media environment, where every day liars and hucksters peddle disinformation and lies everywhere, from Facebook to Fox, there's the White House attacking Fox News, process stories that fail to unpack the illegitimacy of the claims on which House Republicans are basing all of their actions only serve to generate confusion, put false premises in people's feeds, and obscure the truth. So this is the White House telling the media, you will not cover this with any scrutiny on Biden. You will cover this by giving only scrutiny to Republicans. You will treat this as they don't use the words because it would be almost too on the nose, as a witch hunt. Although Chuck Schumer did use that earlier this week. This is a witch hunt. An impeachment based on a witch hunt, Chuck Schumer said, without any sense of irony whatsoever. The White House throwing a directive to these media executives. Do not cover what the Republicans are saying and what the White House is saying. That is an illegitimate way to cover this story. You have to attack Republicans. It is the only way to cover this story. Now, on that point, there is a CNN piece up today that almost looks like it's responding. Or it's doing the job that the White House expects here. Headline, fact-checking McCarthy's claims while launching Biden impeachment inquiry. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy made several unproven claims Tuesday while announcing the opening of a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. CNN doing this right away. The Republican-led investigation will focus on, quote, allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption, end quote, by Biden, related to his family's overseas business dealings, McCarthy said. They admit here, there is clear evidence that Biden's son, Hunter Biden, leveraged his famous name while pursuing lucrative foreign deals, which might be untoward, but isn't illegal. And he isn't a government official. The impeachment inquiry is into his father. House Republicans have not presented any proof that Joe Biden ever profited off of his son's business deals or was influenced while in office by his son's business dealings. And then they go on to assess a couple of the claims that McCarthy made and say that they've got a good fact check on this to prove how this, I don't know what they're proving here. So, for instance, here's the first claim. Biden family and associates got $20 million through shell companies. And then they quote McCarthy saying, bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family. And then this is the next line in the CNN piece. Facts first. This is true about Joe Biden's family and associates, but there is no public evidence to date that the president personally received any money. Okay. So his family and associates got $20 million through shell companies. This is true, CNN points out, and then says, but you can't blame Biden. All right, let's go to the next one. Claim. An informant alleged that the Biden family got a bribe. Here's McCarthy's quote. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. Here's the next line. Facts first. It's true that an informant gave a tip of this nature to the FBI in 2020 and that the Bureau had viewed him as a credible informant. But the underlying allegation that the Biden family was given a bribe is totally unproven. So, isn't this a fun game where they say that all of this redounds to Biden's benefit, even though all of the evidence is against Biden? Here's another one. Let's see here. Biden participated in calls and dinners with son's business partners, McCarthy said this week. Facts first. McCarthy's claim omits key context about what was and wasn't reportedly discussed in the calls and dinners. A Hunter Biden associate testified that even though Joe Biden was on these calls and at these dinners, he didn't discuss business. Oh, okay, so he was on the calls? Sorry, what is that? Does that go in the pile of evidence or no? Not evidence. I think that's evidence. Let's try another one. This is all in the same CNN fact check. Claim, Biden family members' financial transactions were flagged as suspicious. McCarthy mentioned the suspicious activity reports. CNN, the existence of these suspicious activity reports don't prove wrongdoing on their own. So, okay, once again, they confirm that the suspicious activity reports occurred. They say that the bank was just giving a tip to investigators out of an abundance of caution. What unbelievable spin. Unbelievable spin. So they say, that's fine. Joe Biden's not guilty of anything. And there's no evidence that he is. Then Vice President Biden used his powers to help his son's business. That's another claim here that McCarthy made. CNN, facts first. There is no public evidence that Joe Biden abused his government powers to help his family. That's a lie. That's a lie. Did Joe Biden meet with Hunter Biden's business partners at Cafe Milano on multiple occasions? Yes. Was Joe Biden on phone calls with his son's business partners as a part of sweetening the pot, ensuring that the Bidens would get more money? Yes. That's according to Biden family business partners. Is there evidence in the form of a trusted FBI source saying that Joe Biden was actively involved in a bribery scheme in order to get a prosecutor fired in Ukraine? Yes. Here's another one. Claim, Biden lied about his knowledge of family's business dealings, McCarthy said. Okay, that one's obviously true. That one's so obviously true he lied. Facts first, CNN writes. Joe Biden's unequivocal denials of any business-related content with his son have been undercut over time. Undercut, that's generous. But so far, there is no public evidence that his occasional interactions with Hunter Biden's business partners led to him getting substantively involved in his son's financial arrangements. This is so generous. The lickspittle coverage here. And they're doing exactly what the White House asked, which is don't scrutinize us, scrutinize the Republicans. Turn it on them. Say that they have no evidence. And here's CNN delivering. Annie Grayer, Marshall Cohen, and Daniel Dale, the embarrassments on the byline of this CNN piece. I mean, you've got one of the biggest scandals in American history staring you in the face, and you're running cover for the government. Well, look at that. We're out of time. Now I got to send you off to an underground command post deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.